The concept of angels exists throughout many different cultures and communities, usually winged beings that are characterized by their virtuousness and purity. In most religions, the angels were created by God amongst all other heavenly creatures, and like everything in the standard monotheistic plan, angels had a specific purpose, ambiguous as it may sometimes seem to us. They are usually seen to be devout servants of God, fulfilling his whims upon the earth by delivering messages, bringing warnings, or in some apocalyptic texts, actually getting involved in both spiritual and earthly battles. Amongst all of God's creations, it is the angels who are considered to be the closest to him, and it is the angels who we are shown in the Bible, basking in his glory. Yet it would appear that despite their loyalty and impressive powers, it is mankind who is God's favourite creation, one he values above everything else. We see a great example of this in Islam, particularly in Surah Al-Baqarah, where we are told, "And remember when we said to the angels, prostrate before Adam, so they all did, but not Iblis, who refused and acted arrogantly, becoming unfaithful." As can be seen in Islam, despite angels being made first, and despite the proximity that angels have to the Almighty God, God still makes them prostrate before Adam, highlighting not only the importance of man, but just how much God valued man in the first place, arguably showing them the favoritism akin to the favoritism a father might show their child. Indeed, an argument can be made that God is the father of mankind, and he views each person as his son or daughter, considering that he did, according to belief, give life to them. But then he also gave life to the angels, so why are they not viewed as his children? Well, according to a belief in Pre-Islamic Arabia, at least 3 angels were considered to be the daughters of God, and in some regions were worshipped exclusively as goddesses. According to notes in the German translation of the Quran by Catholic Islamic theologian Adel Theodore Khoury, there was a belief that certain angels, including the likes of Al-Lat, Al-Uzza and Manat, otherwise known as goddesses in some Arabian regions, were considered to be the daughters of God in Pre-Islamic Arabia. However, by the time of the 7th century, when Islam had become widely accepted in these same regions, the notion of God fathering angels, or there being female angels at all, was fiercely rejected. We need only look at Surah Al-Najm to learn the Quranic attitude toward female angels, where we are told, "Indeed, those who do not believe in the hereafter label angels as female, although they have no knowledge in support of this." This is seconded in Surah Az-Zukhruf, where an even more scathing condemnation of such a belief is presented. The pagans have made some of his creations out to be a part of him. Indeed, humankind is clearly ungrateful. Has he taken angels as his daughters from what he created and favoured you, O pagans, with sons? The argument here essentially aims to poke holes in the concept that God would have angelic children, and if he did, why would he have daughters when he could just as easily have any kind of child he wanted? The argument attempts to show humanity, particularly the pagans who came up with this idea, as ungrateful, and maybe even presumptuous, that they believe God's daughters, if he had them, would be human at all. Furthermore, with the preference of male heirs over female ones in this time period, the argument seeks to point out a flaw in the concept, in that if God had children, why would he have daughters when mortal men could conceive sons? More importantly, why would the pagan men spouting these ideas be blessed with sons, whilst God was essentially stuck with daughters? So it is true that you won't find female angels in the Quran, nor will you find male ones, considering their gender neutrality. Much less will you find the daughters of God that appears to have been a common belief amongst pre-Islamic Arabian communities. But evidently from some of the verses in the Quran, this belief was notorious enough that denouncement of it was required in the Holy Book. It is true that the more an idea is silenced, the more intrigue it leaves behind. And because the idea was met with such animosity during the advent of Islam, it does beg the question as to who these angelic daughters were, and why the pre-Islamic Arabs, these pagans as the Quran describes them, were so keen to associate them with God. Of these angelic daughters, otherwise known as principal deities of Arabia before the advent of Islam, were Al-Lat, Al-Uzza and Manat. who in pre-Islamic times do appear to have been worshipped by the Arabians. Al-Lat. The goddess Al-Lat, also known by various names including Al-Latu and Al-Lat, was believed to have been predominantly worshipped amongst the northern Arabian Peninsula and the city of Mecca. According to the Encyclopedia of the Quran, the name of the deity could be found on amulets worn by her worshippers, which has since led researchers to believe that Al-Lat was indeed a goddess that enjoyed a certain popularity. Her realm of influence likely contributed to her popularity, given that she could dispense peace, mercy, and even prosperity, a deity who brought goodwill for worshippers and travellers, whom she was quick to offer protection to. On the other hand, despite her good nature, Al-Lat could be a vengeful goddess if she was scorned, particularly if her amulets were defaced or if her monuments were destroyed, something the Prophet Muhammad ends up seeing to. According to Arabia and the Arabs by Robert G. Hoyland, Al-Lat could inflict a number of ailments upon any who had scorned her, including blindness, deafness, and/or a combination of disabilities that could leave a person lame. Al-Lat was also worshipped in various regions of the Nabatean kingdom on the Arabian Peninsula, but may have also been conflated at some point with the goddess Al-Uzza, who we'll talk about later on. In the History of Prophets and Kings by Muslim historian and scholar Al-Tabari, Al-Lat was associated as the principal deity of the Banu Thaqif tribe, who still to this day live in the city of Taif. Here she was believed to have a shrine that was adorned with gold and a statue made of granite to capture her likeness. It was on this site that no blood could be spilled, nor any violent gesture be made, lest the transgressor experience the wrath of the goddess. Her primary cult image here was believed to be a white stone, though we do also know of a statue known as the Lion of Al-Lat, found in the city of Palmyra by a temple believed to be associated with Al-Lat. Here, the lion is believed to be representative of her consort, whilst the gazelle it is seen to be with is believed to be representative of Al-Lat herself, and her more tender and loving qualities, especially when in conjunction with the belief that violence was not permitted on her sacred ground, hence the cohabitation of lion and gazelle. Despite this belief, Al-Lat's shrine and temple in Taif were both destroyed under the orders of the Prophet Muhammad during the expedition of Abu Sufyan, who in 630 AD burned Al-Lat's temple to the ground. According to the Arab scholar Ibn al-Kalbi in his Book of Idols, which describes the gods and customs of the pre-Islamic Arabian people, Muhammad had placed the tribes of Taif under siege, including that of the Banu Thaqif. As part of Muhammad's demands in the wake of the city's surrender, the destruction of Al-Lat's image was a priority. After the decimation of the goddess's temple, the Banu Thaqif converted to Islam and only recognized Allah as their god thereafter. Al-Uzza. Much as Al-Lat was worshipped as a white cubic stone, a similar stone cube found near Mecca was also believed to be used in worship of her sister deity Al-Uzza, particularly by the Quraysh, an Arab people who once inhabited Mecca. According to the Book of Idols, an Arab once built a house in Mecca that served the purpose of communicating with Al-Uzza. The Quraysh who lived here would often frequent this very house, and would also journey from regions further out to deliver gifts and even sacrifices. In fact, the name Uzza itself was once believed to be a popular name given to newborn children in the area, as a means to not only honour the goddess, but also ensure that the child in question was blessed. Very little is actually known about the goddess's realm of influence, with some believing her to be a goddess of the morning and evening stars, and others linking her to a goddess of love and war, possibly akin to the Babylonian Ishtar. Another idea proposes that she was symbolized by the collection of 3 acacia trees, those which were common near the great temple that was erected for her by the Nabatean people at Petra. By the time of the conquest of Mecca, the Prophet Muhammad was determined to stamp out any remnants of the gods who had preceded Allah, and went to great lengths to eliminate pre-Islamic practices by any means necessary. Military commander Ibn al-Walid was sent during Ramadan in the year 630 AD by Muhammad to a place known as Nakhla, where the goddess Al-Uzza was worshipped by the Quraysh. According to one story, Ibn al-Walid was ordered to destroy any temples, shrines or statues that were made in tribute to Al-Uzza. Whilst this was conducted, Ibn al-Walid was stumped when he came across the 3 acacia trees said to be inhabited by the goddess Al-Uzza. He struck down the first tree, then the second, but upon approaching the third tree, Ibn al-Walid was stunned to find a dark-skinned woman with wild hair standing in his way. In some versions, this was Al-Uzza in the flesh, who made one last-ditch attempt to repel the forces of Muhammad. Unlucky for her though, Ibn al-Walid proved to be a better swordsman, and was able to cut her in half with a single strike. Upon hitting the ground, both parts of her body turned into ash, and Ibn al-Walid was able to cut down the one remaining tree. When he returned to Muhammad, it is believed that Muhammad confirmed that the woman was Al-Uzza, and that now that she had been slain, she would never be worshipped ever again. Manat. The final goddess of the pre-Islamic trio was also regarded as the oldest, and was considered to be a goddess of fate, fortune, and time itself. We know once more from the Book of Idols that the tribes known as the Banu Aws and the Banu Khazraj, found in Medina, were considered to be the most devoted of Manat. Al-Khalib tells us that those who would embark on a pilgrimage to the goddess would first shave their head, before presenting themselves before the goddess's idol and standing before her in a trance state. Al-Khalib also notes that Manat was worshipped alongside her sisters Al-Lat and Al-Uzza in Mecca, most notably around the time of Kaaba, where the pre-Islamic worshippers would chant their names in exchange for blessings and good fortune. According to the book Sacred Places of Goddesses, author Karen Tate tells us that Manat was also considered to be an overseer of graves, protecting the plots in which people were buried and ensuring that the dead rested well. Much like her sisters, however, Manat fell to the conquest of Muhammad in the year 630 AD. Much as the story surrounding Ibn al-Walid's killing of Al-Uzza, another military man named Sa'd bin Zayd al-Ashali was sent by Muhammad to destroy Manat. According to the tale, when al-Ashali arrived at the scene, he too was met by a dark-skinned woman who appeared with wild hair, who wailed and thumped at her chest. Al-Ashali wasted no time in killing her, destroyed her idol, and concluded his mission, where he later learned that the woman was indeed the goddess Manat. From what we can gather, it's probable that Al-Lat, Al-Uzza, and Manat were indeed worshipped by the Arabians in the time before Islam became more prominent. It isn't completely outlandish to say that for these people, these deities were the daughters of a more principal deity, whether this was Allah or not. The fact that the Quran is so adamant to denounce these goddesses as being angels and as being daughters of God only shows us that people once did take these ideas seriously, but that once Muhammad was through with his siege, most people were quick to rescind these gods and recognize Allah only. In another Quranic verse, from Surah An-Najm, the 3 goddesses in question are referred to by name as Muhammad speaks of them. We are told, "Now have you considered the idols of Lat and Uzza, and the third one, Manat as well? Do you prefer to have sons while you attribute to him daughters? Then this is truly a biased distribution. These idols are mere names that you and your forefathers have made up, a practice Allah has never authorized. They follow nothing but inherited assumptions and whatever their souls desire, although true guidance has already come to them from their Lord." Once more, Muhammad challenges the idea that these were daughters of Allah, because why would God choose to have daughters instead of sons? Why would he bless man with his sons but reserve daughters for himself? He's also seen here to be calling out those who believe in this idea, condemning them for their selfishness, as they put themselves first over God, giving God daughters and keeping sons for themselves. Once more, this is in line with the attitudes of the time period, where having sons was imperative when it came to the inheritance of the estate and the succession of one's legacy. Muhammad is also seen here to make it clear that the idea of Allah having angelic daughters is not congruent with Islamic belief, and that these entities that were worshipped by the Arabians before Islam were not even real. He declares that they merely made assumptions, and that Allah had never authorized their beliefs. Therefore, they were not true. Interestingly, this verse in Surah Al-Najm actually became the source of some controversy, where certain variations of this account were suggested by the companion of the Prophet Muhammad, Ubay ibn Ka'b. In its simplest form, after asking Al-Lat, Al-Uzza and Manat, Satan was said to tempt Muhammad into praising the goddesses, saying, "These are the exalted Quranic, whose intercession is hoped for." After uttering these blasphemous words, the angel Jibreel appears and chastises Muhammad for saying such things, and makes it clear that these three entities are false deities and should not be offered anything short of shunning. Of course, the majority of Muslim scholars have since rejected this incident as ever happening, especially considering Muhammad was the Prophet, and thus unlikely to have made such a mistake in the first place. As always guys, if you've enjoyed today's episode, then don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for more content just like this. Until next time.